Hello, welcome to the Time to Talk podcast. My name is Shannen. This is Pastor Schroeder. And the last couple weeks we've been going over Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and now we are going into 4, which should be interesting. So we're going to be talking about the Cain and Abel story and what that looks like. So you want to take it away, Pastor?
I do want to take it away because this is an amazing chapter to me. The Bible talks about all people sinning and going away from God. And what we see is right away, Adam and Eve have a child who's a sinner. Sometimes people have this tendency to think, children are born innocent and they learn the evil from what people do. And I'm not saying that's not true, but they're definitely not born innocent. Maybe they do see an example, but because they're evil, they have they follow that example and they shake hands with that example. What's interesting is, though, humanity does not even need an example to do evil. You check out Cain and Abel. Cain is the first one born of Adam and Eve. He is the first child. And he did not learn this from watching rated R movies, okay, to kill his brother. He did not learn murder from some kind of sordid book he read. He did not learn murder. He didn't watch his dad kill Eve. He did not, when I was younger, uh, they started censoring cartoons, specifically Bugs Bunny cartoons, because, sometimes Bugs Bunny will they'll shoot a gun and it'll blast somebody's head off, and they started to take that off, and I realized it, and it's like, what are they doing? They don't think I have a brain, and realize that that's not real, but this is causing problems. And of course there can be gangster rap or what all these things, violence that you see on TV, and it can make you go, oh, they're just learning these bad things. Well, here, this guy is doing this without any example. He didn't learn it. It was
There was
just
no
part of him.
TV or
Right.
music that could teach that type of thing.
It was just part of him. I mean, and he didn't have to. It was just him. God even told him, "Hey, be careful, you're going the wrong way." And he still does it anyway. And so there's just something in us that goes the wrong way. And there appears to be in Cain, he's unhappy with God. God accepted Abel's sacrifice and not him, and he can't get at God, so it seems like he takes it out on his brother Abel, and he murders Abel. And
maybe they learned from sacrifice.
Well,
I'm not saying that they're learning. I'm just thinking out loud.
Just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
But even if they learned from sacrifice, that was not a human being.
Right.
How could you, it's not just that a person murdered, but they murdered their own brother. Okay.
It's not like he thought, hey, I'm going to sacrifice my brother to God. He killed him out of anger.
Right. And so you're exactly right. And I think sometimes people go too far in that direction. Oh, children are born innocent. They just have bad examples. Well, there's just something in them. And maybe they do have bad examples, but they follow the bad example perhaps because their sinful nature shakes hands with that bad example. So even though a lot of times people focus this on, they get kind of wrapped up in why God accepted one sacrifice and not the other. The thing that really hits me is that this talks what Lutherans would say is original sin, that this is just part of humanity now. The previous chapter, Adam and Eve sinned. Now their children have sinned. And boom, their firstborn son winds up being a murderer, a murderer of his own brother.
I was reading, I don't know if you've ever read the Apology of the Augsburg Confession. Have you ever read that?
Yes.
I was reading some of that, and the first chapter goes into what original sin looks like and also what original righteousness looks like.
Well, way to go. I'm so proud of you that you're reading that.
Well, I looked up what should Christians be reading besides the Bible to help connect things, and that was one of them to read. It's a little bit above my mental capacity to understand, just a little bit, but the more I'm reading it, I'm starting to understand what it's saying to me.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah, well, that's kind of tough because did you read the Augsburg Confession first?
so which one?
The Augsburg Confession, this is the apology to the Augsburg Confession that you're reading. And
Oh,
so it
so there's
helps
a
if
book
you,
before.
yeah, you read the first one
Oh.
and then you read the second one.
Oh,
So it might have helped you a little bit with
I
that.
see.
So,
Yeah.
but oh man, now I'm feeling bad because
I'm only in the first chapter, so.
yeah.
And the very first chapter was talking about original sin.
Hmm.
And you brought that up, so that's why I thought, oh, I'm gonna pull it up and
Oh man, well do they mention Cain and Abel in there?
no, he mentioned like a verse in Corinthians and Psalm talking about original sin,
Hmm.
but he didn't say Cain and Abel.
Okay.
Let's see.
I think this is why it's kind of the forgotten verse for what I would call original sin. And it really is just, it follows the pattern.
Hmm.
Adam and Eve are sinners, and now their child is a sinner. And anyways, it's
Hmm.
a fascinating thing. But one of the things that also, you can comment more about that, but I can go on and start talking about other stuff too. Okay. In regards to people do get bothered by, well, why did God accept Cain's Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's? And then people really go into, oh, it was because one was a blood sacrifice and the other was just a sacrifice of crops. And God really likes blood sacrifice. Um, Text doesn't really say that. Uh, Not that, of course, the one would probably have had to have been a blood sacrifice that Abel gave, and Cain did give a crop sacrifice. But the book of Hebrews deals with this, and it says, by faith, Abel offered a better offering than his brother's Cain. And you're like, by faith? What does that mean? I
Hmm.
would have to say that it would mean by faith in God's grace. Uh, Once a person becomes a believer, then everything they do after that uh, to honor and to love God becomes a good work. But first, you have to have faith. Now, we believe as a Christian that even our most great works, our most perfect works, still aren't perfect before God. We're born with a sinful nature and we have dirty hands and we don't do anything with the proper fear of God, the proper love of God, and the proper trust in God, or I should maybe the perfect perfection of these things. And the only one who really did that was Jesus Christ. But in regards to this sacrifice, God accepted it because I would say accepted it through his faith. Abel must have believed in God's grace, or else he wouldn't have accepted anything. But Cain, of course, believed in God. He actually had a conversation with God, and God said, "Don't do whatever you're thinking you're doing." So it's not like Cain didn't believe there was a God,
Right.
but he didn't seem to get God's grace.
The
And
devil believed God too.
the devil believed God's too. And but I would say this: it's not like God's grace isn't meant for the devil, it is meant for humanity and all of other God's creation. But well, the devil was created by God. So if a person would said, "Oh, no, I don't know about that one. What about the devil?" But the devil's in rebellion against God, and it seems in Scripture that that's just how it is, and it's never going to end. Okay. So, but anyways, I don't want people to go into, oh man, so it was the sacrifice that Abel gave. It was more of a bloody sacrifice, and God only accepts blood. Only blood pleases him. I don't think the text goes there, or how it's interpreted in the New Testament really goes
Hmm.
there. And sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, he gave the best of his sheep," and I do think it says something like that.
Yeah.
But what actually Cain gave, maybe it wasn't the best of his crops. I'm not sure, but the Bible doesn't really. The New Testament emphasizes above all things that this was faith, and if he gave the best of his animal of his whether whatever it was sheep or whatever, it was because he did have faith in the Lord and he did love him. So I think it all works out fairly smoothly, but people really can get hung up on that.
Yeah. I know, like, so what if the roles were reversed? What if Cain worked the flocks and Abel worked the soil?
Man, this is a great observation. Uh, I s- if still think God would have accepted Abel's offering and not
Because it
accepted
was
Cain's
came from like a righteous heart.
because it came from a righteous heart that trusted in God's grace. Nobody can please God apart from faith. So the Christian who receives
Mm-hmm.
God's forgiveness, everything that he does out of love, and never perfect love, out of trust, never perfect trust, out of fear, never the perfect fear that you're supposed to have. That person's where they lack, God fills it in and he forgives it and he accepts their works that are done out of love
Right.
towards God.
Yeah.
So it seems like the secret sauce, according
Yeah.
to the New Testament, is that Abel had faith.
Right.
Nothing to do really with, like you just said, I love it if things were reversed. I never thought of that. Would God have accepted it if Cain brought something, if Cain was the one who brought the animal? I don't think so.
Hmm. Well, it says here, why is your face downcast? God was talking to Cain.
Hmm.
And he said, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted?
Hmm.
So maybe God knew he didn't do what was right. So that makes kind of ties into the fact that Cain didn't have a righteous heart
Hmm.
in those moments.
Right. And maybe he thought, well, I'll just do this and God will
Because I'm
bless me.
supposed to.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe like, oh, if I do this, God will be good to me. And whereas Abel seems to be a thank offering.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks God for this, and God accepted it.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's interesting, but I would always have to say that you want the New Testament to, if there's a question, try to find your answer in the New Testament rather than in the Old Testament, if the Old Testament is not giving the answer straight up. So that's the good news. That's kind of, you can understand that and interpret that.
Mm-hmm.
So
And if we're talking about origin or talking about righteousness, I think people get confused at what righteousness is.
okay, you mentioned a righteous heart. Uh, Righteousness is a tough word in the scriptures, and that's kind of hard because there's a lot of righteous or righteousness. Depending on the context and how it's used, righteousness can be God's righteousness, his perfect law, he does things right. But it also can be God's deliverance. Sometimes it also can be what God is crediting you with.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we as Christians, we are declared righteous by God. Why? For Jesus' sake. So, in other words, Jesus lived a perfect life in our place. He was perfectly righteous. And now God counts Jesus' perfection to us. We're
Mm-hmm.
righteous. We're innocent. We're good because of everything Jesus did. Not that we do it perfectly, but because Jesus did it perfectly. So it's as if we had done what Jesus did. That it's as if we were perfect as Jesus. He looks at us as if it was Jesus. So God does two things with the law in the New Testament. He appeases it by having Jesus die on the cross, and he fulfills it by actually obeying the law perfectly in our place. So, but sometimes the Bible will just say righteousness and it means delivering. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes righteousness means also simply good works. So it all depends on the context. You can have a righteous heart in that you have received Jesus' righteousness as something that you hold on to. His life, and I'll also say his suffering and death, you hold on to that to your salvation. You are declared innocent because of what Jesus has done. And a person who does believe that, there's also righteousness in their heart, meaning, yeah, God has started something good in there. But when it comes to their salvation, they only look to Christ's righteousness. But when it comes to good works, yeah, they have some righteousness in their heart. They do things because God has made them different people, to a certain extent, righteous people. God has made them a good tree and they produce good fruit.
Mm-hmm.